Welcome to another episode of Living with Purpose. I have a very interesting guest today, Mart McClellan, who is both a orthodontist and also a wealth manager. And he's doing some very interesting work with AI and dentistry now. So let's get started. Mart, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a true pleasure to be here with you today.
Let's start off with your very interesting journey, right? That you have this multiple interests. You started off with getting interested into dentistry because of your visits to Kenya and other parts of the world as part of your social trips. Talk a little bit about your background, where you grew up and how you got interested into dentistry.
Yeah, my dad worked for IBM, so IBM stands for I've Been Moved. So we lived in a lot of different places.
I've never heard that.
I grew up in many places and in the States. I was born in Europe. I was born in Germany, went through the military. But I always wanted to be in the health professions. I just didn't know which one I wanted to journey down. My initial thoughts were to be a physician. But as you mentioned, when I was in college, I was invited to go to a mission project to Kenya. And I also went to one in Guatemala. And that's when I was exposed to dentistry. And I never really knew what dentistry was, but after those mission projects, I decided to take the plunge and go down that path. And so then I went to Northwestern Dental School for my dental training, and then I ended up going to University of Michigan for my orthodontic training. Because then I was invited to go on another mission project to the Amazon rainforest in Peru, where I was anticipating to become an oral surgeon, but then I found out pulling teeth wasn't for me over a long period of time. So that's when I moved over to the braces and orthodontics, and that's where I started my career many years ago. And I was private practice for numerous years and had traditional financial advisors. And I was realizing that wasn't really working for me. And I don't believe in coincidences. I think things happen for a reason. And one of my dental school classmates called me up one day and said, "Hey, I met this one individual who's really changed my life financially, and they want to sit down with them." And so at that time, I sat down with my friend and now partner, Tim Stride, and he became our family advisor for 7 years. And so he helped us tremendously during the dot-com crash. All my buddies were losing a lot of money during the dot-com crash. We remember those days. And the model or the system that he presented to me actually worked as planned, which was just fantastic. And so after 7 years of using it as a client, I approached Tim and said, "Hey, never in a million years thought I would be asking you this question about maybe becoming a wealth advisor or a financial advisor. But what do you think about bringing your message to the health professions, since doctors are not trained in any of this and growing up in dental school or wherever, med school? Why don't we start the business?" So we started our company, Mac Wealth Management, 20 years ago. So I've been in the advisory business for that period of time. And I juggled two balls for a long time with treating patients and doing wealth advisory. I really don't treat patients anymore. It's a wild ride. I guess I'm kind of a mutt, right? I'm doing multiple things at one time. But it's okay. I love it. I love helping people give beautiful smiles for their entire life. And there's also now we're helping people give purpose to their money. And it's a lot of fun helping people in that way as well.
Let me just go back a little bit in your growing up, just to kind of set the context. Talk a little bit about some of these formative experiences that kind of got you to have this ability to think in multiple ways. I mean, most of us are traditionally kind of just trained, and then we kind of get into a path, and then we stay on that path till we retire, and then we kind of go do other things. So talk a little bit about constantly moved, your parents, were moving, and how did that impact your growing up and your thinking, and then what got you to Northwestern?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I do think a lot of that moving actually helped me grow as a person, because when you move from place to place to place, you have new environments, new people, having to engage people on a communication standpoint, learn how to, develop really good interpersonal skills, because when you're young, it could be scary. And, people don't like to transition and move from here to there. But I think that made me more resilient through time to say, hey, change is okay. And a lot of times people get very caught up in not wanting to change. And as we get older, that becomes more difficult. So as you said, when you pivot to do two things at one time, that's kind of a challenging thing for most people, but I embraced it. And I found it very beneficial for me too, because in orthodontics and dentistry, it's a different mindset than financial advisory, wealth management. So I felt I like that in my brain. I like kind of doing different things like that. Maybe that's maybe a little ADD or something, but I do find that my formative years and growing up with my family, we have a very strong family unit, and my parents are always very supportive of do what you ever want to do. We're not going to get in the way of that. And my dad was always a big proponent of saying, be your own boss and try to control your own destiny as much as you can. I just followed that path, but I do think a lot of that started in my early years for sure.
I've had multiple careers where I've gone from architecture to nonprofit to corporate to education. And one could say that it's ADT, or one can actually say it's
Right.
just a different way in which we see our lives unfolding. I mean, you talked a little bit about this, that nothing happens by chance, and there is always a reason why you meet certain people. And I've also felt that where, as I've moved different stages in my life, it's always been because some connections got made and I decided to take a risk. So you've got a practice, you're doing well with your dentistry, you've got your orthodontist practice. I mean, not everybody can succeed as a wealth manager, and not everybody can actually get people to entrust their money to somebody else. So talk a little bit about, why that became a thing that you wanted to do, and how did you move into it, and what were some of the challenges that you had to face with this practice that you now have over 20 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the question of why, right? And so it does get back to the point of Americans in general as well. They're not really trained on financial education or what to do with their money, whatever it be. And then doctors are notorious for making not great decisions with their money through time. And so I felt that for me, being in the medical profession, it comes down to the trust factor, right? You want to trust the person that you that they want to share their wealth with and show you how to build their wealth. And so for me, that was the biggest piece of the puzzle, because I was in the trenches with my colleagues. I worked treating patients just like them. And I just felt that it was very important that one of our big models or mantras in our financial business is to, provide evidence-based financial information, because in dentistry and medicine, you hear about evidence-based healthcare. And we all believe that's what's most appropriate for our patients. Yet very few people really believe in evidence-based financial planning, because they don't really have any types of models to sort of measure decisions against. And so that's where I love that idea of, okay, I'm a doctor, I'm one of them. They can trust with me information, but then I can also trust but verify what we're recommending with a high level of confidence. And so that's what really made me pivot to sort of do something like this, where, there's such a huge need even today. And it's exciting to help people do that.
So, like you've got an audience that's listening to you and are wondering about, what do you mean by evidence-based wealth management? And more than that, I mean, maybe you want to kind of just start off and take this opportunity for our listeners to actually kind of understand the importance of managing your financial resources, and then what differentiates with what you are doing.
Yeah, the big differentiator is that it's a very interesting concept. Most people know about the exponential curve of life, the long compound interest curve, and we only have one of those in our entire life. We only have one shot at it, right? And so it's very, very important to understand that every decision that you make today not only has an impact on that curve on the front end, but also on the back end, and it actually has more impact on the back end. The majority of all of our wealth is created in the last 5 to 10 years of that curve. What makes us different is that in the traditional world of personal finance, people focus on accumulating money, like give me X amount of dollars over X amount of time at this interest rate and just let it accumulate. That's okay, but it's not the way to build wealth more efficiently. And so we want to change the word from accumulate to accelerate. So instead of doing the traditional way of just accumulating, we want to sort of move money just like the bankers do, the financial institutions do. They velocitize it. They'll use $1 over multi periods of time over a year or 2 years. And we want to do the same exact thing with our personal wealth over a period of time. And so when you do that, you really take advantage of that wealth curve and maximize it. We call reaching your maximum financial potential, because every dollar that comes into our lives today has a position. There is places that it should go from an economic standpoint. And when you recognize that, then it gives purpose to your money. We call it, everybody likes to be charitable in their financial planning model, but sometimes they're scared to give more money to charity because they may not have enough for themselves. So we say, hey, why don't we build plans where you can enjoy your money to its fullest? Don't disinherit your family, your children, and also give to charity. And when you do that, when you understand that curve and that concept of acceleration, that gives you the ability to do those things for your family and charity.
I love the way you kind of phrased it around acceleration and then acceleration with purpose. So let's talk a little bit about why you believe purpose is an important thing and that living a life of purpose, and how have you articulated your purpose, and how does that then help you, especially when times are tough?
It becomes a driving force. And what you tend to see, and you can probably attest to this as well, is that when we're younger in our careers, we're driving, we're doing, we're go, go, go. And then you get to be 50 plus and you're like, life changes. You're like, all right, what am I doing all this for, right? And you have a lot of wealth maybe in your coffers. The purpose for me is all about that. And I know if I'm doing a good job for people, then we'll be able to, like in our planning process, we get a portion of all the fees to charity. And so everybody, we surround ourselves with the understanding that giving back, and I'm sure the more you give, the more you get, right? And so when you do that, society can change. You can change the world. When you go to places like Kenya and Guatemala and you see these people and you just put a smile on their face, it's the little things. And it doesn't take much to give purpose to what you're doing. And it doesn't even have to be monetary either. Be of service with your time and your energy.
How did you discover your purpose? And when did you discover it? And why do you think that it is important for all of us to discover our purpose?
I discovered my purpose, I think, very early in my career, because I always wanted to be of service in some capacity. And I think that's, my mom always really put that, said, always try to help people. She's the one who directed me, not my dad, but she's the one who directed me to the health professions. And so, that my purpose was of service, I said a long, long time ago. And so that's what energizes me, wake up every day and know that we're moving in that direction.
One of the things that I try and tell people is that we spend way too much time trying to get our kids to actually figure out the job they want to do, whether the service that they should be part of.
Yes.
Right? So you can be a dentist because you have discovered that service is through the healthcare profession. Yeah. And then you kind of then discovered that it was not a physician that you wanted to be, but that you wanted to actually look at the importance of oral health. And then in oral health, you decided, orthodontist is what you want to be. But at the end of the day, it was driven by a factor of you wanted to be in service of something.
Yes.
And you don't see this as a job.
Exactly. And that's where passion comes from, right? It's so... It drives your passion when you're of service. It's everything. And it's not about the money. It's about being of service.
I'm assuming that the work that you're doing with wealth management is also driven by a sense of purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't feel that we weren't moving in the direction of service each and every day.
You kind of talked about it in terms of the wealth management planning side, but talk a little bit more about it from a human side as to why what you do in terms of the service that you're providing is important for individuals to be part of.
One of our objectives or one of our mantras is we want people to spend and enjoy their wealth, not only during their working years, but also their retirement years. And so when you open their eyes to seeing that money's of really no use if you can't enjoy it and use it and offer it in ways to the communities, your faith, or whatever it may be. And when they do that, they recognize that it's not a dog-eat-dog world out there. You get excited. And that's, I think, for me, when people say, hey, I made a great donation to my church or my faith or my university or a cause that I love. I had open heart surgery when I was 45 years old. And so when you have those types of episodes, you like to give to those causes to, make sure that people in the future will be taken care of. And so those types of things drive me. Everybody's different, and there's nobody just the same. It's not a cookie cutter thing. Everybody has different wants and desires of life.
And that's, again, very interesting, right? To recognize we as humans have similarities, but as individuals, each is very different.
Yeah.
And to me, the importance of purpose is that purpose allows you to actually create these bridging networks that allows you to actually look at somebody that might be different from you and appreciate their differences rather than actually finding commonalities. Because purpose allows you to actually appreciate differences and build on those differences. So then the question of commonalities actually does not arise.
Mm-hmm.
And that you don't want to become, not having a better analogy, birds of a feather flock together.
Yep.
To a large extent, you've got this richness of birds all over the world. And you'll be able to enjoy all of them. So let's transition to this last question as we come to an end to the podcast. Tell us your one golden nugget, a piece of wisdom that you want to leave our listeners with.
One golden nugget I'd like to share is to be curious without regrets. I don't know if you know Coach K. He was the coach of the Duke Blue Devils, one of the most successful.
Absolutely.
And I heard him speak just recently at a meeting I was at, and he made a similar comment, but he said without judgment. I said without regrets. He said without judgment. But I think in the world we live in, we need curiosity. I think it's becoming less common in our world, and sometimes people get scared, and maybe gets to that change factor. I think the more curious we are, without regrets, right? We all make mistakes, and that's fine. You learn from those mistakes, and you move on. I try to live that way as well, and I think curiosity is a wonderful thing to always aspire to.
I love that we all have to be curious. Without curiosity, you cannot explore the world.
Right.
And the world is full of richnesses. And Mart, you've kind of explored some of that through your travels, whether it is in the Amazon or in Kenya or in Guatemala or any other world, or even when we travel.
Yeah.
On vacation, travel with curiosity, because then it becomes a travel with purpose. And that you are then not just extracting something, but you're actually leaving something behind of value.
Absolutely. And I think that curiosity creates connections too, right? And so we wouldn't be talking today if it weren't for certain connections that are the people we know and the friendships we've created. And that expands the network of society the more curious you are. I truly believe that.
Mart, thank you so very much for being part of the podcast. Again, to our listeners, be curious.
Yes.
Be purposeful and be curious. Purpose is that inner source of energy that drives you forward. Light up your purpose. It's like a light switch. It's that renewable energy that continues to allow you to move forward. Thank you very much for listening. And again, to our listeners, for those of you that are interested, we have a book that is coming out called Living with Purpose. If you're interested in being part of the book, reach out to us. Again, visit our website, purposemindset.org. Mart, thank you very much for being part of the podcast.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.